Hello, this is David Lee, and welcome to today's Prevent Connect web conference. I'm glad to have you joining us. Today's topic is preventing intimate partner violence across the lifespan, a technical package of programs, policies, and practices. This web conference is being co-hosted and sponsored by the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. Prevent Connect is a national project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, sponsored by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views and information provided in this web conference do not necessarily represent the official views of the United States government, the CDC, or CalCASA. Thank you for joining us. We have people from all around the country joining us today. I'm really pleased to be welcoming our co-hosts from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. We have Ann Menard and Casey Keene. How are you doing, Ann and Casey?
Hi, David. It's always a pleasure for the NRC to partner with Prevent Connect and our friends at the Division of Violence Prevention. I'm happy to be joined here by Casey Keene, NRCDV's talented Director of Programs and Prevention.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. It's really our pleasure to lift up so many great tools and resources from across the United States and internationally.
Thanks.
Well, great. It's great. Well, it's a great pleasure to get a chance to be able to work with the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, who does such important work, and we'll be sharing much. There's going to be a lot of resources they're going to share. In fact, there's so many of them that they've prepared an entire handout with all of the links, so you can get that on the Prevent Connect website. And right now, also, Meghna will be has posted the link for that, and we will also post each of the individual links in the chat too. But we want to make sure that there's lots of information that's available. So we're going to do that because there's such fabulous resources on the wide variety of web conferences and websites and collections that the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence has put together. So we're here today because just a few weeks ago, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released their fifth technical package in series of technical packages around violence prevention, and they released this report called Preventing Intimate Partner Violence Across the Lifespan, a technical package of programs, policies, and practices. And I hope we have the link here for you to be able to reach that. And I just want to get a sense from all of you. In the left-hand corner, I've got a little ABCD. Let's talk about how familiar you are with that package. So we're making the assumption because you signed up for this that you're aware that that package was released, because this is a web conference about it. But let's go ahead. A, do you just know about it? B, you've actually skimmed it. C, you've actually read the entire package. And D, you actually have already used the package, which would be pretty impressive because it's been released rather recently. But let's just see. And go ahead, and I still have a large number you have not answered, so let's go ahead and share how familiar are you with this new CDC publication. Just want to get a sense of how we're going. A lot of you have not voted yet, and so great. I'm going to share the results now. And so Ann and Casey, it's about two-thirds of our audience is familiar with it. About a quarter have skimmed it. About 5% have actually read the whole package, and I have one person who says they've actually used it. But I think one of our outcomes that we're looking for today is that more of you will look at this, and that most importantly, that many of you, that you will start using this technical package to help inform and strengthen your prevention practice. So thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and withdraw that question, and we're going to now. Today's learning objectives are that you want to be able to have everyone who attends this web conference can describe the 6 strategies highlighted in the technical package, that you'll be able to identify resources to support your prevention decision making, and that you'll be able to identify potential sectors to involve in intimate partner violence prevention. Just from the language, we are using generally the term intimate partner violence and domestic violence synonymously for the purposes of what we're doing. There are sort of the technical art of the terms, but that's how we'll be using those today. So I'm really pleased to introduce our guests from the Division of Violence Prevention, National Center on Injury Prevention and Control, the Centers for Disease Control Prevention. And so I'm really pleased that we have Phyllis Nylund and Megan Kearns from the CDC. So how are you doing, Phyllis?
Doing great, David. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Megan, it's so great to have you joining us again.
Yeah, always glad to be here.
Great. So Phyllis, we're going to start with you as you're going to take this presentation. And I know we've got a lot of things we'll be asking the audience, but why don't you start by letting people know about this report?
Great. Thank you, David. We are very excited to be here today and want to thank Prevent Connect and the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence for inviting us here to talk about our technical package on preventing intimate partner violence across the lifespan. As all of you know, intimate partner violence, unfortunately, is highly prevalent. It affects millions of people in the United States each year. Data from the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey indicate that nearly 1 in 4 adult women, about 23%, and approximately 1 in 7 men, or about 14%, in the U.S. report having experienced severe physical violence, which is being kicked, beaten, choked, or burned on purpose, having a weapon used against them, etc., from an intimate partner in their lifetime. Additionally, 16% of women and 7% of men have experienced contact sexual violence. This includes rape, being made to penetrate someone else, sexual coercion, and or unwanted sexual contact from an intimate partner. 10% of women and 2% of men in the U.S. report having been stalked by an intimate partner, and nearly half of all women and men have experienced psychological aggression, such as humiliating or controlling behaviors from a partner. We also know that the burden of IPV is not shared equally across all groups. Many racial and ethnic and sexual minority groups are disproportionately affected by IPV. We also know that intimate partner violence starts early in the lifespan. An estimated 7% of adult women in the U.S., that's about 8.5 million women, and 4% of men, that's more than 4 million men, reported experiencing physical violence, rape, or being made to penetrate someone else, or stalking from an intimate partner in their lifetime, and indicated that they first experienced these or other forms of violence by that partner before the age of 18. We also know from the 2013 YRBS that among students who had dated in the past year, 21% of girls and 10% of boys reported either physical violence, sexual violence, or both forms of violence from a dating partner. We also know that the health and economic consequences of intimate partner violence are substantial. Apart from physical injury and death, there are also many other adverse health outcomes associated with IPV, including a range of cardiovascular, reproductive, gastrointestinal, and nervous system conditions, many of which are chronic in nature. Survivors of IPV also experience mental health consequences such as depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Additionally, a substantial proportion of survivors also report other negative impacts such as fear, concern for their safety, missed days of school or work, and needing mental or physical health services as a result of IPV. Substantially more women than men report these and other negative impacts from the IPV that they experience. IPV is connected to other forms of violence. Experience with many other forms of violence puts people at risk for perpetrating and experiencing IPV. We know that children who are exposed to IPV between their parents or caregivers are more likely to perpetrate or experience IPV, as are individuals who experience abuse and neglect as children. Additionally, adolescents who engage in bullying or peer violence are more likely to perpetrate IPV. Those who experience sexual violence and emotional abuse are more likely to be victims of physical IPV. Research also suggests that IPV may increase risk for suicide. Both boys and girls who experience teen dating violence are at greater risk for suicidal ideation. Women exposed to partner violence are nearly 5 times more likely to attempt suicide as women not exposed to IPV. Intimate partner problems, which includes IPV, has also been found to be a precipitating factor for suicide among men. Research also shows that experience with IPV, either perpetration or victimization, puts people at higher risk for experiencing IPV in the future. The different forms of violence often share the same individual, relationship, community, and societal risk factors. We know that intimate partner violence is preventable. a comprehensive approach that simultaneously targets multiple risk and protective factors across the social ecology is critical to having a broad and sustained impact on IPV. This technical package represents a select group of strategies based on the best available evidence to prevent IPV, including teen dating violence, from happening in the first place or to prevent it from continuing, as well as approaches to lessen the immediate and long-term harms of partner violence. CDC's former director, Dr. Tom Frieden, outlined technical packages as one of the 6 key components for effective public health program implementation. Technical packages help sharpen and focus what otherwise might be a vague commitment to action. They help communities avoid what Frieden called a scattershot approach, or use of a large number of different interventions, some of which may have only a small impact. And they are designed to achieve substantial and synergistic improvement in outcomes. This package, as David noted, is part of a suite of technical packages developed by the Division of Violence Prevention to address interpersonal and self-directed violence. This is the last of the 5 violence topic-specific packages to be released. More information about these packages is available on our website. Technical packages have 3 primary components. The first component is the strategy, or the preventive direction or action to achieve the goal of preventing violence, in this case, intimate partner violence. The second component includes the approaches, or the specific ways to advance the strategy. Examples of specific programs, policies, or practices are given for each approach. The third component is the research evidence supporting each approach for its impact on violence or risk or protective factors. It's important to note that the examples of programs, practices, and policies with evidence listed under each approach are not meant to be an exhaustive list of evidence-based programs. They are just some of the stronger examples of programs, practices, and policies with evidence of effectiveness on IPV or associated risk and protective factors. Also, each of DVP's violence topic-specific packages are meant to be living documents that can be updated as additional evidence emerges. We began this work with a review of the prevention literature and consideration of the best possible evidence available around a select group of strategies to prevent intimate partner violence from happening in the first place or to lessen harms and prevent future risk. This led to identification of approaches that states and communities could implement to advance the strategies, and also described how various sectors could support implementation. Before finalization, packages were reviewed by partners, including federal partners and DVP's core policy network. This slide lists the evidence criteria being used for all of the technical packages produced by the Division of Violence Prevention. Ideally, we looked for rigorous evidence demonstrated in meta-analyses, systematic reviews, or rigorous evaluation studies, such as RCTs, of impact on perpetration and victimization of IPV. When there was not that kind of evidence, we looked for evidence of impact on risk and protective factors for IPV. Consideration was also given to the likelihood of the program, policy, or practice having beneficial impacts on other forms of violence. The likelihood of program benefits when implemented in different settings and with different groups, the feasibility of implementation in a U.S. setting if the example program or policy had been evaluated in another country, and of course we wanted to be sure that there was no evidence of harmful effects with any of the programs, policies, or practices. It is important, again, to keep in mind that the package includes examples rather than a comprehensive list of all evidence-based programs or policies for each approach.
Great. So, Phyllis, let's now move. That was great. I appreciate the giving that really great background, and we've given lots of the links for this. To me, what's the most exciting about it are these different strategies. So, Phyllis, why don't you talk about we'll give a little overview of the strategies, and then we're going to go through each of the strategies and have the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence also share some of the resources available for each strategy. So let's go ahead.
Yes, great. Thanks, David. This slide is a summary table of the 6 strategies included in the package and the corresponding approaches to advance each strategy. As you may notice, the package includes strategies intended to impact individual behavior as well as strategies to impact influences at the relationship, family, school, community, and societal levels. The next several slides provide a bit more about each of these strategies and approaches. It is important to notice here that most of these strategies are focused on the primary prevention of IPV, stopping IPV from ever happening in the first place. But as the intent of this package is to cover the best available strategies for preventing and combating IPV across the lifespan, it also includes some strategies meant to prevent future IPV, sometimes among those who have already experienced it, and to mitigate harmful consequences of IPV for survivors. The first strategy focuses on teaching safe and healthy relationship skills, which is a critical piece to the primary prevention of IPV. There are a number of approaches that teach skills and promote expectations for healthy, nonviolent relationships, including social emotional learning programs for youth. These programs focus on promoting expectations for mutually respectful, caring, nonviolent relationships and work with youth to help them develop social emotional skills such as empathy and respect, as well as healthy communication and conflict resolution skills. Safe Dates and the 4th R are examples of school-based programs that teach these skills to prevent teen dating violence. Both programs have demonstrated effects on perpetration of dating violence. Expect, Respect groups are another example of a social emotional learning approach for students at higher risk of TDV. Evaluation findings show beneficial effects on reactive and proactive aggression among both boys and girls, but seem to be more effective for at-risk boys in regards to teen dating violence perpetration and victimization. Healthy relationship programs for couples are another approach for teaching safe and healthy relationship skills. Some of these programs work with couples who are engaged or just entering committed relationships to increase relationship quality, relationship satisfaction, and relationship skills, while others work with couples trying to address a problem, such as substance use. Couples-based approaches have historically been controversial in the field of IPV prevention and intervention, and most agree that treatment programs for couples where severe violence and fear are already occurring are not safe for survivors. I want to be very clear that this package is not supporting the use of these types of therapies for couples where severe violence and fear are already occurring. However, for other couples, there is some evidence that relationship programs that focus on improving these relationship skills can demonstrate effectiveness in reducing the likelihood of IPV perpetration in the future. One example is the Premarital Relationship Enhancement Program, or PrEP. This is a 5-session intervention for committed couples that focuses on teaching couples skills, techniques, and principles designed to enhance positive relationship functioning and promote effective management of negative affect. The goal is to maintain high relationship functioning and prevent problems from occurring in the relationship. The program has been found to prevent relationship violence as well as increase satisfaction and communication skills. Another example is behavioral couples therapy, which works with couples on conflict management and other relationship skills as part of the substance abuse treatment. BCT is associated with significant reductions in perpetration of IPV among couples participating in treatment groups. The effects of behavioral couples therapy have been found for both male and female substance users and their partners, and these effects are particularly pronounced for individuals who successfully stopped drinking or remitted alcoholics.
Let's move to the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. And Ann, can you just briefly talk about some of the resources about social emotional learning programs?
Thanks, and Casey and I are going to do this together, and thanks to Phyllis. As Phyllis mentioned earlier, the IPV technical package includes examples rather than a comprehensive list of all evidence-based policies or programs for each of the approaches. Casey and I appreciate the opportunity to point you in the direction of other resources that can help you implement the strategies and approaches included in the IPV technical package. Importantly, some of the ones we will be highlighting have been developed by communities of color and Native communities and are helping to advance all of our work in important ways. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey to talk about the youth-focused programs.
Yes, thanks, Anne. So I also want to point out, and I know David mentioned this earlier, that we did include a handout that has links to all of the tools that we're talking about and highlighting today, in addition to some more that we felt we wouldn't have time to, talk about all of them, but that you can also find all of these tools either on VAWNet at vawnet.org or through the Prevent IPV project website at preventipv.org in our tools inventory. And so there's lots of great tools that have been developed in this area of social emotional learning. A few that I'd like to highlight are Hardy Girls, Healthy Women. It's a girls' empowerment program that addresses girls' lives in a relational and social context. So I think that makes it particularly robust. And Be Strong from Peace Over Violence builds on concepts of womanhood, respect, and positive relationships as a strategy for health promotion and violence prevention. But what I really want to lift up is the VAWNet Special Collection, which includes a variety of tools to address identity formation and exploration, gender socialization, healthy relationships, healthy sexuality, mindfulness, storytelling, and other topics that are relevant to fostering resilience, respect, and healthy growth in childhood and beyond.
Okay, moving on to the healthy relationship programs for couples. Domestic violence advocates have always been about promoting healthy relationships, and I particularly appreciate CDC's careful framing of the strategy and recommended approaches, particularly related to lifting up the well-founded concerns of advocates and allied professionals against using couples counseling in relationships in which there is intimate partner violence. The approaches and programs that CDC note in the technical package have been carefully selected for their attention to safety concerns, and Casey's identified a few others that we want you to look at.
Thanks, Anne. So when it comes to teaching healthy relationships, a variety of programs and tools emerge, many of which are captured in the special collection on VAWNet on preventing and responding to teen dating violence. For example, the Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence's I Am Courageous campaign includes healthy relationship tips and relationship rights and responsibilities that emphasize respect, consent, and trust. But the Native Love campaign of the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center is a particularly innovative, culturally specific program that encourages Native youth to challenge harming dating norms and to restore traditional ways of loving, characterized by respect, honor, kindness, and compassion.
Back to you.
Great. So let's go. And Casey, we seem to have lost you online for a second, but
yeah, I'm trying to get myself back on.
Yes. So I want to go to the audience, and we talk about teaching safe and healthy relationship skills. So I want to get a sense from you, what resources are you familiar with using this strategy and approach? What have you done around teaching health and safety relationship skills? What are resources that you would want to highlight? Because we know that there's a lot of places. The CDC report highlighted examples such as 4th-R and Expect Respect and some of the others, but I want to get a sense of what people are familiar with. And so I'm seeing many people talk about Safe Dates, Girls on the Run, Coaching Boys into Men. We actually will come into an Engaging Men piece here. Choose Respect, use of the Equality Wheel, Crossing the Line from the One Love Foundation. A lot of people are talking about use of Safe Dates and how they've been using that. And some people have mentioned 4th-R, and so there's an area. Some people have talked about. I've seen another mention of the One Love Foundation's movie Escalation and what they're doing to be able to teach those skills. So great to be able to see some of the part Sarah's talking about in Rhode Island, the Real Talk conversation cards. So I think it's important to be able to see the range of some of these, and many of these will be in some of those other collections that Ann and Casey have referred to. So let's go back to Phyllis. We're going to do this bouncing back and forth. I think it's great to get you off of the audience and talking about engaging influential adults and peers.
Great. Thank you, David. Yes, the second strategy in our package focuses on engaging influential adults and peers, as David said. Trusted adults and peers are important influencers of what adolescents and young adults think and expect and how they behave. Engaging adults and peers to promote social norms that support healthy relationship behaviors and condemn violent and unhealthy relationship behaviors is a critical component to the prevention of IPV. There are a number of approaches that seek to influence the social context within which intimate partner violence and teen dating violence occurs by engaging influential adults and peers, including those that engage men and boys as allies in prevention, those that focus on bystander empowerment and education, and those that focus on families. For men and boys as allies in prevention, coaching boys into men is one example under the first approach. I noticed that a lot of you were entering that one into the chat just a minute ago. Coaching boys into men provides coaches with training tools to model and promote respectful, nonviolent, healthy relationships with their male athletes. It is associated with reductions in the perpetration of teen dating violence, including physical, sexual, and emotional aggression, as well as significant reductions in engagement in negative bystander behaviors, such as laughing or encouraging abusive behaviors. For bystander empowerment and education, efforts to increase bystander efficacy are beneficial in alcohol and drug use reduction and have been applied more recently to bullying, dating violence, and sexual assault. One example is Bringing in the Bystander. This program teaches college student participants about how relationship violence and sexual violence occur along a continuum, from less aggressive to more severe behaviors, and teaches participants how to safely intervene, offering opportunities to practice these skills and create plans for how they will intervene to prevent violence as a bystander. Participants in the program demonstrated increased self-reports of likelihood to intervene and confidence in their ability to intervene. Higher intentions to intervene have been shown to be a protective factor for teen dating violence, with one study finding these intentions to be associated with a 40% lower likelihood of perpetrating IPV. Green Dot is another example. First tested among college populations, a randomized controlled trial of the program with high school students, which many of you heard about yesterday, found significant reductions in dating violence perpetration and victimization after 3 years of program implementation, as well as reductions in other related violence outcomes such as sexual violence, including sexual harassment and stalking. For family-based programs, they operate on the premise that family is central for the development of norms and values and therefore amenable to interventions that promote acceptable behavior in relationships. One example is the Families for Safe Dates program. This program targets teen conflict resolution skills, teens' acceptance of dating abuse, and caregiver knowledge about dating and efficacy to influence teen dating violence behavior. Families for Safe Dates was evaluated in a randomized controlled trial and found to motivate and facilitate parent or caregiver involvement in teen dating abuse prevention activities, increase caregiver self-efficacy for talking about dating abuse, and decrease negative communication with teens. At follow-up, teens in the intervention group reported decreased acceptance of dating abuse, which is a risk factor for teen dating violence perpetration and victimization, and significant reductions in reports of teen dating violence victimization over time compared to no treatment controls.
So Ann, why don't you start by talking about some of the resources?
Thanks. In addition to the programs and resources highlighted in the technical package, there are a number of others that we want to bring to your attention. I'm going to let Casey go on about that.
Yes, thanks, Ann. So yeah, I agree. There are so many amazing resources and strategies being implemented in the area of engaging boys and men. which we have compiled into a special collection on VONET that you can take a look at. But what stands out to me in this area is Men Can Stop Rape's assessment for the Campus Technical Assistance and Resource Project featuring OVW's campus program grantees. It highlights their experiences and lessons learned in fostering men as allies in the prevention of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. But a particular standout in this area is the Te and Vito campaign from the National Latino Network for Healthy Families and Communities. This campaign was developed specifically for Latino communities in the U.S., which includes resources and tools that are easily adapted for use in local communities. This campaign emerged from listening sessions with Latino men who said, when it comes to engagement in the work to end domestic violence, simply invite us. So great stuff to implement there. Around bystander empowerment and education, we've seen many effective campaigns that implement these strategies, specifically with men, including Men Can Stop Rape's Where Do You Stand campaign and Mujer Hasta Aquí No Mas campaign, both which center around building bystander skills in potentially violent situations. Also, I want to lift up See the Signs, which is a unique campaign from the Ohio Domestic Violence Network in partnership with the Avon Foundation that focuses on building upstander skills in the workplace, promoting responsible action on the part of employees and organizations to address and prevent gender-based violence. And when it comes to family-based programs, there are not a lot that are aimed at domestic violence prevention in the traditional sense. But there are many tools that focus on family systems, including Stand for Respect, which comes from the Indiana Coalition in partnership with their youth council. That project seeks to engage youth and adults in conversations together. So it's youth having conversations with caregivers about these issues. The Indiana Coalition also developed a Skin-to-Skin campaign, which encourages healthy bonding between fathers and their babies starting at birth. So we're seeing some potentially amazing outcomes from that kind of a strategy. But since 1990, the program Caminar Latino has followed a culturally specific family-centered model to engage all members of the family in ending domestic violence. They serve Latino families in Georgia. And by including all family members in the process, this program addresses both abuser accountability and victim safety and healing. So some really good program examples that we can highlight that really do pull in all of the family in addressing domestic violence. Back to you, David.
Thank you, Casey. So there's a lot of resources. Let's draw back to our audience. Let's talk about engaging influential adults and peers. And what resources are you familiar with using this approach? What are some of the resources that you could suggest, and get a sense from what's going on in the audience? As you can see in the text chat, we're sharing lots of resources here, but I'd love to get a chance to get a sense of what's different types of approaches. So there's, and many people are listening, I got appreciating the Green Dot. Megan had pointed, we did an entire web conference yesterday on Green Dot, looking at the most recent research, the Where Do You Stand campaign, and being able to see what's going on. Some people talk about using Mentors in Violence Prevention around bystander intervention, the MVP program, and so that's been done at a lot of high schools and colleges throughout the country. Some talk about Men Can Stop Rape, which had been referenced several times here, Coaching Boys and the Men, Student Leadership in Athletic Youth, which is sort of an accompanying program for female athletes called SLAY, and we'll be actually seeing more of that coming soon. Ohio, some work from the new playbook with the Ohio Men's Action Network, more engaging men work, and the 10 Men Project over in Rhode Island. I'm trying to get my pieces here, and then Decode Your Teen for parents to develop skills in talking to their teens, And so, and No More, I'm seeing people talking about the No More campaign. So it's great to get a sense of some of the resources that the audience is familiar with and using. So great, thank you for highlighting those. So Phyllis, we've got now another strategy. Let's talk about disrupting the developmental pathways towards partner abuse.
Yes, thank you, David. This is the third strategy in our package. Findings from several longitudinal studies indicate that many of the factors associated with perpetrating violence against intimate partners are evident well before adolescence, including poor behavioral control, social problem-solving deficits, and academic problems, early onset of drug and alcohol use and involvement with antisocial peers, crime and violence, exposure to chronic stress and adverse experiences such as child abuse and neglect, witnessing violence in the home and in the community, and parental substance abuse, depression, criminality, and incarceration, and negative parenting behaviors and unstable and stressful family environments. The technical package then includes 4 approaches under this strategy that directly address some of these early risk factors for IPV perpetration and victimization. Early childhood home visitation is one approach. These programs provide information, caregiver support, and training about child health, development, and care to families in their homes by nurses, professionals, or paraprofessionals. Some programs also include components to address co-occurring risks such as IPV in the home. The Nurse-Family Partnership Program, or NFP, is one example that has been evaluated in multiple randomized controlled trials and found to be effective in reducing multiple risk factors for IPV. For instance, it's associated with a 48% relative reduction in child abuse and neglect, which is a risk factor for both victimization and perpetration of IPV. Although the effectiveness of home visits on IPV needs more study, in one NFP trial, nurse-visited women reported significantly less exposure to IPV in the previous 6 months at the 4-year follow-up compared with those in the control group. Preschool enrichment with family engagement is another approach. These programs are designed to build a stronger foundation for future learning and healthy development and to lower the risk for future behavioral problems. These programs have documented positive impacts on the child's cognitive skills, school achievement, social skills, and conduct problems, and are effective in reducing child abuse and neglect and later youth involvement in crime and violence, all of which are risk factors for perpetrating intimate partner violence. Child Parent Centers, or CPCs, and Early Head Start are 2 examples of effective programs. Parenting skill and family relationship programs are also important. These provide parents and caregivers with support and teach communication, problem solving, positive parenting skills, and behavior monitoring and management skills to reduce children's involvement in crime and violence and later risk of perpetrating IPV. The Incredible Years and the Parent Management Training Oregon model are 2 examples of effective parenting programs with impacts on risk and protective factors for perpetration of teen dating violence and later partner violence, including significant decreases in child behavior problems and later youth substance abuse and perpetration of violence, improvements in parental monitoring, discipline, and adaptive family functioning, including among parents with a history of physical aggression toward a former or current partner, and a prior arrest. Treatment for at-risk children, youth, and families is the 4th approach under this strategy. It is intended for children and youth with histories of child abuse and neglect, childhood aggression, and conduct problems, and prior involvement in violence and crime. It's an approach to address trauma and mitigate the consequences of these exposures, including risk for perpetrating violence in adulthood against a partner or one's own child. Several therapeutic programs have demonstrated impact on risk factors for later development of IPV, including reductions in violent behavior and substance use, and improvements in family functioning and positive parenting. For example, a systematic review of therapeutic foster care approaches, such as the Multidimensional Treatment Foster Care Program, demonstrate an approximate 72% reduction in violent crimes among participants. Multiple studies showed the benefit of MTFC in reducing behavioral problems, attachment issues, and neurophysiological changes due to stress in preschool-aged children, and reductions in violent crimes, incarceration, and substance abuse among adolescents. Multi-systemic therapy is another example, or MST. MST has been evaluated in numerous trials and is associated with significant long-term reductions in rearrest and out-of-home placements. Other benefits include decreased rates of child maltreatment, improvements in family functioning, parenting practices, and parent-child interactions, and reductions in youth substance use and involvement with gangs.
Thanks, Phyllis. This is Ann Menard again from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. One of the things I also really want to underscore for folks who haven't had a chance to spend any quality time with the technical package is that each of these sections has an evidence summary, which is a great resource for all of us. It's well cited, so it really organizes in one place what we know from research on related to these particular sections. So that's a real gift to all of us. So I really commend that to you. Most of you are probably aware of the attention, including federal funding and evaluation research, that home visitation programs have received. We have a number of resources that we want to highlight that can help you learn more about home visitation programs and other programs focused on supporting healthy families and healthy parent and child bonds, while at the same time being sensitive to intimate partner violence and safety concerns. So Casey's going to go through that with you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ann. And I would just want to echo that we are huge fans of early childhood visitation and preschool enrichment as important strategies to both prevent intimate partner violence and to promote resilience and healing for kids who have already experienced trauma. And so I want to lift up the work of Futures Without Violence, which has provided great leadership in this area of making connections between home visitation and domestic violence prevention. They offer a variety of resources to support efforts to maximize the effectiveness and reach of early childhood home visiting programs and to promote collaboration among home visitation, domestic violence programs, and healthcare providers. So please, we encourage you to look to them for strategies and resources that include home visitation programs as an important part of a coordinated effort to prevent domestic violence. Now, when it comes to preschool enrichment with family engagement, I'm really impressed by the UK's National Union of Teachers, who developed the Breaking the Mold program, which challenges unhealthy traditional gender norms with young children in the classroom. So that's a really interesting program for very young children. But my very favorite model program is Head Start Trauma Smart, which was created by Crittenton Children's Center in Kansas City, Missouri. It engages young children as well as their parents, their teachers, their bus drivers, the kitchen workers, everyone who's part of that child's support system in creating trauma-informed learning environments that promote healthy growth and resilience. So they are keenly focused on social emotional learning as an important component of their program, and they've demonstrated some amazing outcomes in that community. Let's see. When it comes to the parenting skill and family relationship programs, in addition to the resources in our special collection, which I highlighted before on fostering resilience, respect, and healthy growth in childhood and beyond, I'd like to highlight the Health Federation of Philadelphia's Amazing Brain series of resources to build the knowledge and skills of parents and caregivers to promote healthy brain development and resilience after trauma. And also I want to lift up the White Ribbon Campaign's Involved Fatherhood and Gender Equity Project. It explores the positive roles that fathers, organizations working with diverse fathers, and the fatherhood sector in Ontario in general can play in promoting gender equity, healthy, equal relationships, and ending violence against women in all of its forms. And then, finally, while we know that children may experience intersecting and overlapping forms of violence and oppression, also referred to as polyvictimization, we're focusing here on children exposed to domestic violence, just lifting up some resources that really explore promising practices to promote healing and resilience across the lifespan. So the Promising Futures website from Futures Without Violence offers a variety of helpful tools for building the capacity of individuals, families, and organizations to promote the health and well-being of children who experience domestic violence. So there's some tools that we really love in this area that I think really model the strategies and approaches that are outlined in CDC's package. Back to you, David.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Casey. And there's a lot here in disrupting the developmental pathways towards partner violence, and a lot of the focus on youth and children and how families can do that. So let's go to the audience and want to get a sense of what you've been doing. I think this is such a useful way that the technical packages identifies what these different strategies are and think about how we can do our work. And so we're going beyond just educating people about intimate partner violence and going beyond the social emotional learning and teaching skills and beyond doing allies, but also being able to interrupt. So I'd love to hear from the audience. What resources are you familiar with? What resources and approaches that you would have to be able to highlight towards disrupting developmental pathways? And so Head Start immediately came up. Something about the parent newsletter and the Safe Dates program and the Families for Safe Dates, which we talked about in the prior strategy. Healthy Families Home Visiting Program. Some people talk about in-shelter programming for children, for people there. Safety Kids, Strengthening Families, 5 Protective Factors Framework. Leslie talks about Positive Parenting Solution, Healthy Families Tennessee, and Nurturing Parenting, which is a free voluntary home visiting program. And so we see a lot of different examples that people are giving, and that this is important as we're developing our comprehensive prevention efforts to be able to look at these types of strategies. So great to see people continuing to mention things. So with that, I want to move now to Megan Kearns from the CDC. We haven't heard from you yet, Megan, but why don't you talk about creating protective environments?
All right, thank you, David. I'm going to pick it up with our 4th strategy as creating protective environments, which focuses on fostering a broader social and physical environment that improves safety, social connections, and awareness of IPV, all of which can help create a climate that supports prevention of violence against intimate partners. It also focuses on reducing community-level risk factors and promoting social norms that are intolerant of IPV. One of our approaches is to improve school climate and safety. School environments offer a potentially influential context that can be changed or adapted to promote prevention of teen dating violence. Increasing support from school personnel and modifying physical spaces in schools, for example, has the potential to improve safety and raise awareness about dating violence and harassment and reduce rates of teen dating violence perpetration. For example, the building level component of shifting boundaries is designed to improve safety in schools by increasing staff presence in what they call hotspots, or building areas that are designated by students and staff as unsafe. It also promotes awareness and reporting of teen dating violence to school personnel through a school-based poster campaign, and it introduces temporary building-based restraining orders for students at risk for teen dating violence. In a rigorous evaluation of the intervention in New York City middle schools, the building level component was found to reduce sexual violence victimization in dating relationships by 50%. Our second approach here is improving organizational policies and workplace climate in ways that promote safety and encourage help-seeking behaviors. These approaches can facilitate positive changes in workplace climate and also reduce perceived tolerance of violence towards intimate partners among managers and employees in the workplace. IPV in the workplace training is one intervention with evidence for significantly improving workplace climate towards IPV in county government organizations. Apart from demonstrating support for IPV survivors, the program was also associated with an increase in the development and posting of IPV policies and IPV-related resources for employees. While impact on IPV outcomes has not yet been tested, these findings may translate into increases within the workplace of tangible help and social support, both of which have been found to be protective factors for victimization and perpetration of IPV. The United States Air Force Suicide Prevention Program is another example, while it doesn't explicitly focus on IPV prevention, this program was developed to reduce stigma and social norms that discourage help seeking among U.S. Air Force personnel. It involved 11 different prevention initiatives that were put into practice within the Air Force in order to enhance education and training and create policies aimed at promoting help seeking. A longitudinal evaluation of the program showed a 30% reduction in moderate family violence and a 54% reduction in severe family violence in the years after the program launched. Our third approach focuses on modifying the physical and social environments of neighborhoods. These approaches address aspects of neighborhood settings that increase the risk for IPV, including alcohol outlet density, physical disorder and decay, and social disorder. These community-level factors can be addressed by changing the physical environment to improve social interaction and strengthen community ties and social cohesion in order to promote residents' willingness to monitor and respond to problem behaviors, also known as collective efficacy. And it also works by changing, enacting, or enforcing laws and regulations that improve the economic stability of neighborhoods. Evidence suggests that changing or modifying environmental characteristics of neighborhoods may be an effective approach for preventing IPV. For example, one study found that residents of an urban public housing development randomly assigned to buildings in proximity to green conditions, i.e. trees and grass, reported significantly lower rates of partner violence in the past year than residents living in proximity to barren conditions. The researchers found that levels of mental fatigue, or inattentiveness, irritability, and impulsivity, were significantly higher in buildings next to barren areas, and that aggression accompanied mental fatigue. Additionally, research has also shown that green space in urban communities has been linked to higher levels of neighborhood collective efficacy and reductions in violent crime, which is a risk factor for IPV. Alcohol-related policies represent another potential way to reduce risk for IPV at the neighborhood or community level. Alcohol outlet density, for example, has been consistently linked to higher rates of IPV. For example, in a population-level survey of U.S. couples, an increase of 10 alcohol outlets per 10,000 people was associated with a 34% increase in male-to-female partner violence. Policies that work to reduce a community's alcohol outlet density are one example of an approach that might help reduce community rates of IPV.
Thanks, Megan. This is Ann again. We were real excited to see these community and societal level strategies included in this technical package, especially those designed to build a sense of community connectedness and health, whether that's in schools or workplaces or neighborhoods or at society, within society as a whole. Community engagement and leadership are key to ensure that these approaches truly build on community strength and resilience and don't exacerbate historical marginalization and racial and gender inequities. Casey has some additional resources that we wanted to lift up.
Thanks, Ann. When it comes to school climate and safety, in addition to the important work that's being done on college campuses across the U.S., I'd like to lift up these helpful classroom tools. Both Rethinking Schools and Teaching for Change offer resources to support teaching social justice in the classroom, to promote civic engagement, activism, and just a more culturally informed education, while the Safe Space Kit from GLSEN provides educators with tools to promote safety and inclusivity for LGBT youth. So these are some tools that really, I think, address school climate, school culture. When it comes to improving organizational policies and workplace climate, I'd like to lift up Workplaces Respond as a comprehensive source for information, training, and technical assistance to support employers, survivors, coworkers, and advocates' efforts to prevent and address gender-based violence in the workplace. Additionally, our special collection on employment and domestic violence highlights tools for supporting all women in the workforce that might be of particular interest. And NRCDV's Building Comprehensive Solutions to Domestic Violence project offers a guide on building mission-effective, survivor-defined organizations. The guide offers tools including decision-making, strategic planning, and strategic thinking that promote mission effectiveness and a healthy organizational culture. So through our Prevent IPV project, we've been having conversations to explore how to address domestic violence through a social determinants of health approach. we're exploring factors that promote community environments that support safe relationships and decrease rates of intimate partner violence. One amazing tool to support these efforts is the Community Resilience Cookbook from the Health Federation of Philadelphia, which is a compilation of lessons from 9 communities across the country that have launched collaborative initiatives based on the landmark ACEs study. Each has implemented trauma-informed prevention strategies to help build a culture of health and wellness in their neighborhoods that really work across various sectors and institutions. So really love the work that's being done, and I feel like there's a lot to be learned when you dig into that Community Resilience Cookbook. So we'll pass it back to you, David.
Well, great, and these are so important as we look at how we can be able to change creating protective environments. And a lot of this looks at looking at shared risk and protective factors across all forms of violence. So while we're highlighting here the technical package on intimate partner violence, I do recommend looking at all of the technical packages, whether it's the sexual violence, the child abuse, the suicide, or the youth violence, or looking at some of the shared and protective factors that have been highlighted in reports like Connecting the Dots, because they really highlight how we can be able to make some environmental changes that can, as our colleagues at the Prevention Institute say, a good solution can solve multiple problems. So we want to hear from you about what are some of the resources that you're familiar with. What are some of the strategies around creating protective environments that you are doing? And that it's important that our work not just be done on an individual level, but done on that community level. So I'd love to hear from you some of what are those resources and that you're familiar with in using this strategy and approach to create protective environments. So this one's a little harder because there's fewer of the products that we have, but I'd love to get a sense of how people are doing it. Casey, I think it was great that you were highlighting the uses of the ACEs report, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey, which has done such great research looking at a wide range of adverse childhood experiences and finding ways that we can be able to shift to do things differently. And so some people have talked, Taylor talks about using anti-harassment and anti-bullying workplace trainings, and is already looking forward to be checking out that new toolkit. Love is Respect and That's Not Cool and Break the Cycle, or some other resources. This is one that's near and dear to my heart, which I think is very related to domestic violence prevention, is coming up with community garden projects and citywide beautification and ways that we can be able to pay attention to our environment, to be able to improve the conditions and increase community connectedness, and that indeed can have an impact on being able to prevent domestic violence. It's in our communities. Youth empowerment zones to be able to enhance youth social cohesion, health equity zones and legislations like Sick and Safe Days in Rhode Island are some of the work to be able to improve some of those conditions. I think we're going to get to some of this in upcoming strategies that we're about to do. So with that, Megan, I think I'm going to move you to jumping right into where those comments are going. They tie Megan right into strengthening economic supports for families.
Okay, great. So like David said, our next strategy is strengthening economic supports for families. And this is based on evidence that economic factors such as poverty and financial stress can increase risk for IPV. Studies also show that gender inequality in education, employment, and income is a risk factor for IPV. Therefore, efforts to improve financial security for families and women's education, employment, and income may reduce risk for IPV. Strengthening household financial security is one approach. Examples of ways to strengthen household financial security include income support, such as tax credits, child care subsidies, and cash transfers, all of which can help families increase household income and meet basic needs, food, shelter, and medical care. These measures are associated with decreases in reported rates of IPV and increases in maternal employment and earnings. Microfinance programs are another example that provide a range of financial services and opportunities to low-income families, often with the goal of improving a community's financial health by empowering women. 2 studies on microfinance have found that in combination with training on gender norms and health topics, microfinance program decreased the incidence of past year physical and sexual IPV among participants by almost half after 2 years in the program. Although microfinance has primarily been studied in low-income settings in other countries, it holds promise for use in the United States. Comparable worth policies are another example. While most states have equal pay laws, these laws vary in terms of their provisions, populations covered, and remedies available to employees. The laws also vary in terms of comparable worth provisions, which determine pay rates according to the skill level, working conditions, effort, and responsibility of positions. While these policies have not yet been evaluated for their impact on IPV, they could potentially have an impact on IPV by increasing economic stability of women and their families, given that economic inequality is a known risk factor for IPV victimization. Studies of the potential impact of a national comparable worth policy on earnings inequality show decreases in overall earnings inequality, inequality between women and men, and inequality among women. Strengthening work-family supports is another approach. Policies such as paid leave, so that includes parental, sick, or vacation leave, provide income replacement to workers for life events, such as the birth of a child, care of a family member during times of illness, or personal leave to refresh or recover from a serious health condition. Job-protected leave is also available in some states to help IPV survivors attend court hearings, seek medical treatment, or attend counseling. Paid and job-protected leave policies help individuals keep their jobs and maintain income to cover expenses or address other needs. Research demonstrates that women with paid maternity leave are more likely to maintain their current employment with the same employer after the birth of a child, and women who take maternity leave and delay return to work after the birth of a child have fewer depressive symptoms than those who return to work earlier. One study conducted in Australia found that women working during early pregnancy who qualified for paid maternity leave were significantly less likely to experience physical and emotional IPV in the first 12 months postpartum than women not working. This finding suggests that access to paid maternity leave may be protective against IPV, in addition to helping women maintain employment and potentially reduce mental health issues.
Thank you, Megan. So as an economic justice advocate at my core, I was so glad to see these economic equity strategies and approaches highlighted in the technical package. As the technical package highlights, and as we know from our own experience, gender inequality in education, employment, and income is a risk factor for IPV. This technical package provides support for our continued efforts to promote survivors and community economic empowerment. Many of you are familiar with the Allstate Foundation's Purple Purse initiative, which calls attention to the impact of financial abuse and efforts to end it. Also highlighted, we're lifting up here 2 special collections that we have on VAWNet, VAWNet.org. The first includes strategies and resources to help survivors build credit and build assets, responding to a pretty important tactic that abusers often use to control their partners, which is to destroy their credit and keep them in an economically vulnerable position. So there's been a lot of great strategies developed by coalitions and local programs over the years, and we really highlight those here. The second special collection specifically focuses on the Earned Income Tax Credit and other tax credits that Megan was actually referencing in just a minute ago. In this special collection, we update every year to include the EITC campaign materials developed by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. They have a wonderful national campaign that really encourages people to understand how the Earned Income Tax Credit can help them, that they're eligible for it, and how it can help them build their assets. We also wanted to highlight, in addition to the Workplaces Response to Domestic Violence website that Casey referenced earlier, we direct you to these 3 great resources and campaigns, including the work on economic justice issues by Legal Momentum and the National Partnership for Women and Families, as well as the campaign to support paid sick leave days. Links to these organizations and their websites can be found on the handout that Casey prepared. So we recommend them to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is is an important one, and I always, as we saw from the previous one, talking about creating environmental changes, indeed economics moves that. So I want to get a sense from you of what resources are you familiar with in looking at strengthening economic supports for families as a method for intimate partner violence prevention. Love to be able to see. We have to really, I want to really thank my colleague Meghna, who has been posting all of the links to the documents, and as we said, there's also an entire handout that the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence has put out with links to all of the documents, that all of the resources that they've been talking about. So Lucy talks about in Rhode Island increasing minimum wage campaigns in Rhode Island and nationally. And someone talked Purple Purse has gotten many acknowledgments here, and coming up with classes, being able to offer free courses that would be able to help support people in their work that we can see. And we'll give a link to where you can get that at the PreventConnect.org website to get the link of all of the resources that we listed. I'm not sure what single stop is that Anna lists. If you can give a brief description of that, that would be great. You did give the URL, so put that into the text chat. That would be really helpful. So we see a lot around the economic pieces. I do want to note that there was also an increasing economic that was included, for example, in the STOP SV technical package. And talking about college tuition is also another promising practice to be able to help support. And Meghna has put the resource link to the resource handout. So Megan, we have one more strategy, which is an important one, while not as much primary prevention, a very important one, because we need to be able to prevent not just first-time perpetration and victimization, but also be able to prevent re-victimization that takes place.
Right. Thank you, David. In addition to preventing IPV from happening in the first place, the technical package also highlights the importance of supporting survivors to increase safety and lessen harms. There are several approaches related to this strategy that address the psychological, physical, emotional, housing, and other needs of survivors and their children to help prevent future experiences of IPV and lessen or reduce the negative consequences experienced by IPV survivors. Victim-centered services can help improve outcomes for survivors. For example, domestic violence advocacy includes assessing a survivor's individual needs and supporting them in accessing community resources, such as legal, medical, housing, employment, child care, and social support services. For children of survivors, advocacy includes meeting their needs around recreation, school supports, and material goods. In a randomized controlled trial of women and their children leaving abusive relationships, a researcher found that after 16 weeks of client-centered advocacy services, women experienced less abuse from their former partners at immediate follow-ups than control women. Women receiving advocacy services also reported less depression and greater self-esteem than controls, indicating an improvement in IPV survivors' overall safety and well-being. Housing programs are another approach. These programs can include access to emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing into a permanent home, flexible funds to address immediate housing-related needs such as security deposits or rental assistance, and other related services and supports. Washington State's Housing First program is an example of a housing program for survivors of IPV. The program connects survivors to advocacy services and flexible financial assistance in order to quickly establish permanent housing and to cover transportation, child care, and other costs needed to establish a sense of safety and stability. In a pilot evaluation, 96% of participants remained stably housed after 18 months. Fully 84% of survivors reported an increase in physical safety for themselves and their children. Although this program has not been rigorously evaluated, the pilot findings indicate that providing stable housing to IPV survivors may reduce risk for homelessness and improve women's ability to keep themselves and their children safe from the abuser. First responder and civil legal protections are also important. These approaches provide increased safety for survivors and their children after violence has occurred. Included here are law enforcement efforts designed to help survivors and decrease their immediate risk for future violence, orders of protection, and supports for children. These protections address survivors' immediate and long-term needs and safety. For example, lethality assessment programs can be an important tool to help police responding to domestic violence and to decrease risk for survivors. law enforcement officers responding to the scene of a domestic violence incident use a short risk assessment tool to screen for risk of homicide. The assessment tool includes the partner's access to firearms, the partner's employment status, previous threats, and acts of violence. Survivors who screen at high risk are put into immediate contact with an advocate and are provided safety planning, resources, and medical and legal advocacy. An evaluation of the lethality assessment program indicated that at a 7-month follow-up interview, program participants receiving the intervention experienced a significant decrease in severity and frequency of physical and emotional violence. Given that leaving the relationship is one of the most potentially lethal times in an abusive relationship, an increase in safety for survivors leaving relationships is particularly salient. Supervised visitation and exchange is another example that seeks to decrease risk for survivors and their children by creating a safe space for non-custodial parent-child interaction monitored by a third party. Flory et al. Found that participation in a supervised visitation program resulted in a 50% reduction in verbal and physical aggression between custodial and non-custodial parents, from an average of 12 incidents to an average of 6 incidents post-intervention. Additionally, parents referred to the supervised services were significantly less likely to use corporal punishment after participating in the program, indicating a potential increase in positive parenting behaviors. Protection orders are another support option available to survivors. POs are court-ordered injunctions aimed at limiting or prohibiting contact between alleged perpetrator and survivor of IPV to prevent further violence from occurring. In a review of available research, Benitez et al. Concluded that protective orders are associated with lower risk of subsequent violence toward the survivor. Another example, a study examined a large sample of women who had experienced a police-reported episode of IPV and found that women with permanent protection orders experienced an 80% reduction in physical abuse during the follow-up period compared to women without a protection order. However, women with temporary protection orders were more likely than women without protection orders to be psychologically abused, which really highlights the potential importance of longer-term protection orders at reducing risk for subsequent IPV. The evidence also shows that about 40% of protection orders are violated, but that having a protection order significantly increases feelings of well-being among survivors of IPV, making these a potentially important tool in supporting survivors. And then another existing protection for survivors is reducing access to lethal means for people who have been convicted of a crime related to IPV or who have a restraining order or protection order against them. Women are at increased risk for homicide when their violent intimate partner has access to a firearm. Federal law makes it unlawful for certain categories of persons to ship, transport, receive, or possess firearms, including individuals subject to a court order restraining the person from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or child of the intimate partner, and persons who have been convicted of a misdemeanor or felony crime of domestic violence. State laws often mirror federal law and in some cases enact policy that further limits access. These laws are associated with significant reductions in intimate partner homicide and firearm intimate partner homicide. I don't think that's me that's marking on it.
David, we're not moving the mouse here.
It's okay, keep going.
I'm not sure how that's happening, but someone has been able to do that, so I am quickly erasing.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that is. I'm going to restrict access to the keynote, unless if our captioner is doing that by accident.
Okay, so patient-centered approaches recognize the importance of universal prevention education, screening, and intervention for IPV, reproductive coercion, and other behavioral risks. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force recommends screening women of childbearing age for IPV and referring women who screen positive to intervention services. Women may be screened for IPV and other behavioral risk factors like smoking, alcohol, or depression, and may also be screened for reproductive coercion and educated about how IPV can impact health and reproductive choices. However, not all survivors disclose experiences with violence, and there are also opportunities within healthcare settings to offer universal education on healthy relationships, potential signs of abuse, and available resources and support. Universal prevention education, screening, and intervention may occur in healthcare settings, but they can also be considered in the context of other intervention or program models. Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I am not sure what's going on. Someone has, I think, taken control, and we're calling the company now because there should be no one that that has access to this. So I apologize.
They love our slides. They're drawing hearts on
They're sending love, so
They're
I guess
sending love, but we would prefer to not have drawings on here, and I'm trying to erase them as they come, but I can only do so many.
I had another point on the previous page, but I can't go back. Oh, there we go. Patient-centered approaches are associated with a number of benefits, including reduced IPV. The evidence, however, is mixed, potentially due to the variability in the nature of intervention models tested, or the population studied, or loss to follow-up and other factors. But a systematic review of primary care-based interventions for IPV found that brief, women-focused interventions delivered mostly in primary care offices by non-physician healthcare workers were successful at reducing IPV, improving physical and emotional health, increasing safety-promoting behaviors, and positively affecting the use of IPV and community-based resources. Other systematic reviews have noted significant benefits of counseling interventions in reducing IPV and improving birth outcomes for pregnant women, reducing pregnancy coercion, and women's involvement in unsafe relationships. And then our final approach under the strategy is treatment and support for victims of IPV, including teen dating violence. These approaches include a range of evidence-based therapeutic interventions conducted by licensed mental health providers to mitigate the negative impacts of IPV on survivors and their children. These interventions are designed to be trauma-informed, meaning that they are delivered in a way that is influenced by knowledge and understanding of how trauma impacts the survivor's life and experiences long-term. Treatments are intended to address depression, traumatic stress, fear and anxiety, problems adjusting to school, work, or daily life, and other symptoms of distress associated with experiencing IPV. Cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive trauma therapy for battered women are two examples with evidence showing impacts on mental health consequences such as depression, PTSD, anxiety, and emotional and behavioral problems. CBT has also been found to decrease the likelihood of IPV victimization, controlling for IPV from a current partner within the year prior to beginning the study and prior interpersonal traumas. And I will pass it back to NRCB.
And we are running out of time, so we're going to just really quickly.
Yeah, we've noted that as well. So in the interest of time, we're just going to, flip through some of these slides and show you the types of resources that we have. And we know that, you'll all be looking at the handout and clicking on these wonderful resources to learn more. But certainly we have a lot, to support these different strategies and approaches. So, we hope that you'll check that out.
Okay, great. And so it's important that we think about who we can involve. And this technical package offers many different types of 6 strategies, but there's many different sectors of people that we can involve. So I'd like to get in the text chat. So spend your time writing in the text chat as opposed to, it appears that everyone has access to the bar to write, which has never happened before to us. So go ahead and write down what are some of the sectors that you would involve in doing intimate partner violence prevention. We know on this web conference we have people from domestic violence and sexual assault agencies, from public health. We have people from universities. We have some people from a few others. But who are the people that you think are important to be able to involve? And so I'm seeing examples of community health, media, law enforcement, police intervention, health promotion in the communities, schools become important, health professionals, child care providers, home visiting programs, schools, sport, hospitals, family justice centers, schools, civic groups, clinical staff, businesses, faith communities, coaches, educators. So, Megan, we see a list, and that indeed is what the list that you are at down. So, Megan, we are in the last minute, so I want to, you highlight some of them. Is there one sentence you want to be able to highlight on that, or should we move on?
We can just keep going.
Okay, great. So I want to be able to, the other part that Megan wants to be able to highlight is that, in order to do this information, we need to continue monitoring and evaluating using timely and reliable evaluation. And so that's something that we at Prevent Connect and CDC and National Resource Center on Domestic Violence, of course, are going to be able to help support you in. Finally, we want to think about how you implement this project. So Megan, if you can talk about this for, do your 20 seconds on this slide.
Just to share the next steps for the suite of technical packages, we're currently developing implementation guidance and there's going to be topic-specific guidance and resources tailored to the strategies and approaches in each technical package. And we're hoping these resources will be available in the future on our Veto Violence website.
And of course, Prevent Connect will be sharing those as they come in, and that the technical package is an incredible tool. But I want to get a sense of how do you plan to use this tool? If you are currently involved, how will this support your existing works? If you are new to getting involved in this, how will this help shape this? And what type of support do you need to be able to use this technical package? We want to get a sense about from you, as your final comments, how do you see this technical package being valuable to your work? I really appreciate how the technical package outlines clearly strategies and approaches that help give us a way and a structure to think about how we're going to be able to do our work and identify where the best possibilities are to make efforts that will indeed prevent this work. So it's important to disseminate it to partners, be able to get male engagement, support people's work in doing it, researching different tools to find different approaches, looking about how to zoom out on the approach, thinking about how to integrate their work with some of their work doing around adolescent health and other health initiatives. It should be helpful that people want to continue hearing from each other, and we'll do that. How to involve juvenile justice offenders in thinking about their work. And ideas of implementing, this is sort of a cookbook idea of coming up with many of the chapters and ways to be able to do this, as we will expand the evidence of what we know work, but this provides really useful categories and approaches and strategies to move forward. So I want to really encourage you in using that. We had, as we said, all the resources the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence listed are available. We've given this several times. It's also available on the Prevent Connect website. You can also contact CDC, the Division of Violence Prevention for the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, and get the information there and be able to download it and get all 5 of the technical packages that are available on the CDC's website. So I want to thank all of our speakers today, particularly Phyllis and Megan from the CDC. I want to really thank our co-hosts, Ann and Casey from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. I want to really thank Meghna Bhatt here on our end at Prevent Connect. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for being able to be part of this discussion as we can look at the strategies. Prevent Connect will continue to have this discussion about what our strategies are to advance prevention and be able to explore these in greater detail and other examples. So thank you. This was a wonderful gathering of all of you. This will conclude our audio portion of the web conference. I'll keep the text chat open for a few minutes. Thank you so much. A pleasure having so many of you here join us.